Hey everyone, Coach Investor back to another video for today. In today's video, we have a special guest. We have the founder and CEO of Koyfin. If you've been following this channel for a while, you've noticed that I've put Koyfin in my videos. I go and research companies using that platform. It's extremely helpful for me. Some of you have been using this as well. It's also very, very nice to visualize how a company has been performing, comparing to companies. You can compare global markets, currencies, you name it. The platform is evolving each and every month. So throughout this video, we're also going to have a demo where Rob will go over the most interesting things on the platform to research companies, etc. Again, you can use it as a retail investor, as an institutional as well. It's much more accessible than a Bloomberg terminal or FactSet, for example. There's still a long way to go, but right now it already offers a tremendous amount of value. And yes, if you want to support this channel, there is also a link down in the description below. If you want to sign up to the platform, you can sign up for free. And then if you want to have access to the full Swiss knife that is Koyfin, you can use the link down in the description. Now, enough of me rambling around. Enjoy and do share your thoughts down in the comments below. So I've researched a little bit. I've listened to a latest podcast as well, where apparently you own a Speedo, but we're not going to get into that today. But yeah, you started at Goldman Sachs in 2002, and then 2016 you founded Koyfin. So what happened during those 14 years, basically?
During those 14 years, I was kind of preparing myself for Koyfin, getting ready. I started on Wall Street in 2002, as you mentioned, after college in New York. Very typical of kind of like New York finance career, starting on the sell side, where I was looking at single stocks called REITs, and then moved to a group called Portfolio Strategy at Goldman Sachs, and then to a trading desk that was doing proprietary trading. And then had a bunch of other roles on Wall Street, including working at Citigroup on the options and trading desk, and then worked at a couple of hedge funds after that. So basically, throughout my career, I was always the person that was analyzing data, looking for good, attractive investment opportunities, and there's different ways of defining that. But also really using all the tools and resources that Wall Street has to offer, Bloomberg, FactSet, CapIQ, Reuters, as well as using proprietary internal systems and databases. And I helped build some of those as well. So I was always interested in kind of looking at data sets, figuring out kind of how to optimize tools and how to make them better and more efficient for my team or for clients. So it was not exactly what Koyfin is, but sort of tangentially related in terms of thinking about it from a user perspective and how to make those tools better for investors.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, from a retail perspective, FactSet, Bloomberg, pretty expensive and let's say untouchable actually for retail investors. So it's nice to see Koyfin being what it is today. Of course, I've started using it actually in 2020. Got an email from my uncle saying it looks like a nice platform. So shout out to him. But of course, the platform evolves over time. We're going to see later on what it can do today and maybe some sneak peeks what it could be doing in the future. But how do you make, how would I put this? How do you make the difference or make the platform appealing for retail and institution at the same point, especially with pricing being probably a big aspect there?
Yeah, I think the world is changing. Well, the world has changed a lot, and that's a stupid thing to say. But in the world of investing, if you look at 30 years ago, there was a really big separation, divergence between individual investors and professional investors. So if you were a professional investor, you would look at the fundamentals, financials, and look at kind of go deep into a company's financial health. If you were an individual investor, you probably wouldn't do that. And the reason you wouldn't do that is there was no education about it. And also there were no tools for you to do that, right? So you would have to kind of like go and get the 10K from the mail office and type stuff into your spreadsheet. By the way, you had to do that as a professional investor as well. And then what Bloomberg and all these companies did in the 80s and 90s is they digitalized all this information and made it available for professional investors because those are the ones that were using the data. What happened in the sort of like 2000s, after individuals were able to get brokerage accounts and that became just a lot easier, is that more and more individuals started thinking about stocks not just from a, hey, my broker told me this or I saw this on TV. They wanted to research it, they wanted to understand it, they wanted to make their own decisions. And this idea of kind of democratizing the knowledge and putting the decision making power into the hands of the individual. So it's something that's a relatively recent phenomena in terms of individuals wanting to do this. And when I was starting Koyfin after having been on Wall Street for a long time, it was kind of an interesting question I had: is if I built a platform with more advanced functionality than what's available to most individuals, would individuals even care? And a lot of some of the pushback I received was like, look, if you create this really complex or advanced platform, individuals don't want that. Individuals just want, just tell them to what to buy, what to sell. They just want a YOLO. They don't care about that stuff. And that's probably true for some individuals, but what's surprising to me is how many individuals and how many students are using Koyfin and value the advanced functionality of having that data accessible to them and having that functionality accessible to them. And the line between individual and professional has really blurred in terms of the workflow and what they look at. So if you're looking at the valuation of a company, you're looking at the valuation of a company from the same perspective, whether you're professional or individual. The valuations don't matter. If you're looking at the margin profile or the opportunity for revenue growth, or looking at the TAM, the total addressable market for stock, those are all things that you would look through the lens of just an investor. It wouldn't really matter if you're a professional or an individual. Now, a professional investor probably needs some different workflows in terms of integrating into their trading system. Maybe they have a much more advanced way of modeling things. Maybe they focus a lot more on risk and thinking about it from a portfolio perspective. A lot of times they'll be managing a larger portfolio in the millions or billions of dollars. So it's just a different kind of the stakes are different, but the underlying principle of what it means to be a fundamental investor, the underlying principles of going through the workflows of analyzing a company's profitability, valuation, attractiveness, competitive threats, looking at transcripts, looking at filings. It's going to be the same for an individual that wants to do that versus a professional.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree, because at first, probably for retail, when you get all of the information, it's probably pretty scary because you don't know where you want to start. If you have too much information, there is probably maybe a fix for that. I could ask you this right now and get answered later on, but have you thought about, and I know this is the hype right now, but creating a AI chatbot that could help with financial questions, investing questions, implement that in Koyfin, and then get those dashboards created by the AI, for example?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges, I think that's a really good idea, and we'll definitely look to implement it in some capacity. I'm not sure exactly which one. I think there's kind of like a spectrum for what AI can do and how AI could help a platform like Koyfin. So I think on one spectrum you have what most people now how they interact with AIs through ChatGPT. That's how most people have experienced it. And that's a really interesting use case for ChatGPT in terms of taking all the information that's kind of ever been created on the web and allowing a user to query it and getting kind of like answers and being able to have a conversation, which is truly magic. So the question is, how do you take that and how do you apply it to what we're doing? And I think the useful application, the most beneficial application for users is not going to be in that same format, is not going to be in the format of a chatbot. It's going to be a little bit more of a co-pilot feature.
Yeah.
And a co-pilot feature means that you'll be able to ask the chat or Koyfin GPT some questions, and then it would suggest some functionality within Koyfin or take you to some modules or take you to some functions that answer that question. So instead of having a direct one-on-one chat where it's like question, answer, answer, it's going to actually think through the functionality of the system and then offer to either create that functionality and show you that functionality to take you to that screen. So, for example, if you ask, what are the best growth stocks for me to buy right now? One version could be like, here are 10 growth stocks to buy, right? It's like Tesla and Nvidia, whatever it is. What we envision is that would say like, okay, an investor is screening for something. So it would take you to the screening function. It would set you up for a default screen of EPS growth above 40%, market cap about 200 million. But now you have that screen in front of you, and then you could play around with the
Yeah.
variables and change the variables, right? So it's not kind of like giving you the answer and that's it. It's sort of taking you to the functionality and then letting you explore the functionality further by changing whatever variables or changing the assumptions or digging deeper.
Yeah, I think Shopify released something or announced something similar, Sidekick, last week that helps you with growing your business, your shop, making sales better, etc., etc. So I think it's a good way to go, better than just the chat experience. Now, before we jump into the demo, what type of investor would you say you are have been throughout your career?
Yeah. So the type of investor that I've been throughout my career is probably a mixture of fundamental, thematic, and technical. And that's just the way that I've learned how to invest in the different jobs that I've had throughout my career. I don't think there's one investment style that's better than another. They're all kind of like different. It's like saying, what language is the best or what
Mhm.
sports is the best. They're all different. They're all kind of, depending on kind of like what you value and what you like. And with investing, it's all about kind of like returns and risk adjusted returns. And there's different investors that make money in different ways. There's quantitative investors, momentum investors, fundamental investors, and they don't contradict each other. They're all kind of living with their own different distinct styles. So for me, I started my career as a fundamental investor, so looking at stocks from a fundamental point of view in terms of their earnings progression, the margin profiles, the revenue growth profiles. I then started to learn more about macro as I joined a macro team at Goldman, and so started thinking about things from a top-down point of view, sector exposures and risk exposures and international exposures and economic cycles and how those affect stocks. And then I moved into more options trading. So thinking about kind of like how to think about what the options market is saying. And there it's all about understanding what volatility is, how is volatility priced, and how could you take advantage of that or how you would put that on in the trade. And I'd say the last part is really working on a group at Caxton where I learned technical analysis, where I learned kind of like what technical analysis is and how it's used. And before that, I thought technical analysis was really stupid. It was all kind of like fake. And that really gave me an appreciation that technical analysis is not only real, it's really powerful. And the best investors that use technical analysis use it really effectively.
Mhm.
So I'd say my trading style or my investment style is a combination of all those things. I'd say right now, options is probably the least of those because we don't have options on our platform at Koyfin, and it's slightly different. But my trading style today is a combination of fundamental, technical, and thematic or macro.
Okay. Would you say that's reflected in how Koyfin started
I
and is
think so.
built?
Yeah, I think so. I think like one of the things that's interesting about Koyfin is it's got so much data on the platform, and a lot of ways I built this for myself because I didn't just want to look at stocks and just look at financial data. I also wanted to look at technical charts and look at technical analysis, and so our charting is pretty good. I also wanted to see macro data, so we have all these different macro data points on Koyfin from different asset classes. So even though I'd say the bulk of our functionality is for stock and individual stock investing, we do have kind of all those other things on the platform, which make it pretty interesting and unique and easy for an investor that even if they're just focused on picking stocks, if the yield curve comes up in the media
Mhm.
or inflation or rates or whatever it is, we'll have those data points on Koyfin and they don't have to go somewhere else.
Okay, yeah, I think you call this the Swift knife approach. in a previous interview. So I think it's pretty good. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So the Swiss Army knife of kind of like whatever you want, we have the tool and you just pull it out and use it.
Yeah, perfect. With that said, I think we can go play around with the platform.
Great. So yeah, so web-based platform with live ticking data. This is the homepage. It's called Today's Markets. It's an overview of kind of like all these different asset classes, from indexes to sectors to fixed income to yields to global markets. All this data is ticking live, so you could see as it changes. You could always hover over these data points to see the time frame. And you could also click on these boxes to add them to this graph. So if I wanted to change this for 1 year or 3 years or whatever it is, and add different sectors or different parts, that's how this dashboard works with these boxes. And then we have a bunch of other macro dashboards, which I'll go through quickly. So we have our market news page with our top news, and then we have a bunch of other macro dashboards here called market dashboards, where we lay out some of these very high level macro items. So for example, if you wanted to look at how US sectors are functioning, the trends in US sectors, instead of having to type them all individually into a graph, we basically created these dashboards for you that are pre-canned or pre-made, where you can, I have all the sectors here selected. And again, I can look at it over the past 10 years and really understand what's working, right? So tech is really standing out here. If I look at it over the past kind of like 1 year, a little bit different, a little bit choppy. Tech is still outperforming, but kind of like maybe in a less meaningful way. And looking at it over the past 3 years, just since beginning or middle of 2020, energy is doing really well. So depending on kind of like your time frame, leads to these different sector rotations, which is pretty interesting. And then we have a bunch of other kind of macro dashboards here, whether it's global yields or currencies or yield curves or whatever it is. And these are, again, all for you to just browse if you want to understand what's going on in the market, just to take a look. So those are kind of like market dashboards. The really unique, I'd say, functionality we have is one on this watch list feature. So in this feature called My Watch Lists is really good. This is where you can create a watch list of stocks. So these are different watch lists I have in the tabs here. This is my Rob's watch list, which isn't very impressive, just a list of stocks. I'd say where the power here comes in is the ability to choose any column you want, or any fundamental or any valuation metric you want. We have about 300 metrics, which are powered by S&P Capital IQ. Anything from performance to analyst estimates. You can look at price targets or growth. You can look at any of the balance sheet items and pull these in. And so the way I would add these is if I want a capital expenditure, I would click on it. It would turn blue, and that means it's in my column here. So that would be kind of like a way that I would set up a watch list and then set up the different columns that I want to look at. The other powerful feature is this thing what we call custom columns. So where I can create a formula, and I can have that formula divide or multiply and look at different ratios. So for example, one of the formulas I have here is stock-based compensation versus revenue. So how much stock options a company's issuing versus its revenue. And so that's an interesting metric that I look at. And when I do that, you can see here Coinbase is 55% of its revenues issued in stock options, which is pretty insane. So that's kind of like an interesting way. And then here I have some ways of basically looking at earnings acceleration. So I'll look at kind of like in FY2, how much I basically look at FY2, which is 2 years out. How much is that growth rate versus FY1, and basically see where are earnings accelerating versus decelerating. So that's another custom formula that I use. And then the other interesting kind of like column here to call out are these portfolio columns, where you could put in the average cost or the price target or the purchase date or the quantity of shares, and add them to the portfolio. And then all these other columns are calculated for you. So these typewriters are user inputted fields, and these other columns are calculated once you input these fields. Let me just show you what it looks like in my portfolio here. So I inputted all these quantities. The weight is calculated, the market value. I inputted the average cost. That's why it's gray here. And then I could see kind of like on a year-to-date basis, this is my dollar gain loss, right? Based on the market value, based on the average cost. So it's a great way to track a portfolio. We also have a thing called here summary rows, where you can add a summary row called weight adjusted sum. And what that's going to do is look at the weight adjusted average for the portfolio. So for example, year to date, my portfolio on a weight adjusted basis, and this is weight adjusted sum here, my portfolio on a weight adjusted basis is up 144%, but the median stock is only up 82%. And that's because in my portfolio here, I have a huge weighting to NVIDIA and Meta, and those are up a lot year to date. So that's driving up the returns of the portfolio more than the other stocks. So a lot of kind of power in setting up these columns. And then the last thing I'd mention is the news function here. So if you wanted to get the news for the portfolio, you could do that here as well. And in this news, I can customize. Do I want to see the press releases? Do I want to see the filings? Do I want to see the transcripts? Do I want to see everything? And once you do that, you could sort of quickly go through your list, and the tickers are here, and just see kind of like what's being reported and all the news that's being reported. So that's a pretty powerful feature that we just released. The other thing to kind of mention here is on the screening tool. Screening tool, very kind of a similar concept to a watch list, except instead of inputting the tickers, you're screening for kind of like what you're looking at. You're screening for the stocks in this tool. So this is kind of, let me show you how to create a new one. You hit this plus button. You could get started from scratch, or you can select one of these templates. So let's say, let me get started from scratch. I'll show you what it looks like. So here I could select, do I want to screen for stocks? Do I want to screen for ETFs? Do I want to screen for mutual funds? And if I'm screening for stocks, I get to kind of input the criteria here. So I'm screening here for, let's say, US. Let me just select country here and select US. So let's say I'm looking at the US stocks, and it's going to kind of show me how many of these stocks fit the criteria. A little slow here, but it should come out. And then once I select the criteria here in terms of like what I want to look at, I then select a little bit finer details of the fundamentals or the valuation. So let's say I wanted to look at all the companies that have a growth rate. So I'm going to look at analyst estimates forward growth, and I'm going to look at EPS estimate year-on-year change. I'm going to look at second year out. I'm going to look at all the companies that are growing above 50% 2 years out. So that's going to be my criteria here. And let's say I also want to look at the companies where the estimate revisions, where analysts, Wall Street analysts, are increasing the price, increasing their estimates for EPS versus, let's say, 3 months ago. So I would go to FY2, that's 2 years out. The revision over the past 3 months, I would select that, and I would put that as, let's say, over 10%. So now I have 56 matches that pass my screen. I would click create screen. And these are all the companies that fit that criteria. So you can really go into detail and hone in on the companies for whatever metrics that you find useful. So that's the screening tool.
These change automatically?
I would have to hit refresh for the screen to change. Yeah, because we didn't want it to change kind of without you knowing it. So you would kind of like refresh it, and then it would change. So that's kind of like on a high level, some of the tools that we have. I'd say on this in this menu on the security analysis is where you analyze a specific stock or a specific security. So I have Apple here selected. So for Apple, these are some snapshots that we have for users. So this is my snapshot overview, where you can see the snapshot again, high level information for Apple. I have my graph. I have some key data here, valuation, analyst estimates. We really like visualizing data. We think that visualizing data is great. So whenever something's underlined, you could always hover over here and see the trend of this data. So I could see kind of like what it looked like versus history, or if I wanted to look at total debt, I could hover over that and see what debt looks like. So really easy way to visualize this stuff quickly. I'll go through some of these other snapshots fairly fast. So the description snapshot, again, what's the company do? If it's a company you're just starting to research, kind of the description of the company and some high level data here as well. The percentile rank is a pretty unique feature that we have. What this does is for each of these metrics, so let's say PE, what we do is we look at how that metric compares versus its 10-year history, how it compares versus other tech companies, and how it compares versus the stocks in that country. So for example, PE, Apple has a PE of 30.9 versus its 10-year history, it's in the 96th percentile. So this is on a scale of 0 to 100, meaning the P is pretty high relative to its history. It's about in line versus the tech sector, and it's about at the 80th percentile, so slightly high for kind of like versus the country. And you could get a really quick bird's eye view of these metrics, right? So for Apple, the valuation is pretty high in all these metrics. When you're looking at kind of like valuation yields, it's low because yields are this is going to be the reciprocal of a multiple, so it's going to give you slightly different. Sorry, it's going to give you the same answer but flipped. But some people like to look at yields, other people like to look at multiples. But when you look at margins, profitability, right? Apple is a very profitable company, so it's doing great on gross margins, on EBITDA margins versus its history, versus its kind of sector and versus the country. And then on the leverage ratios, it has slightly higher kind of like leverage relative to kind of its past. But if you look at another metric like debt versus EBITDA, it's really low. So that could be another way to look at it. So this is great to look at for a company as a bird's eye view. If I change this from Apple to like, let's say Macy's, which is a much different company, right? The valuation looks much more attractive for Macy's in terms of where the multiples are relative to its history. But then some of the more fundamental metrics look much more in line to relative to its history and comps, a little bit kind of like on the lower side. So this doesn't tell you what to do, but I think it'll give you a good perspective as a snapshot of a company and how it ranks on these different measures. Change this to Apple. Any anything that I didn't cover, or is anything confusing there?
No, but I think we're gonna get there pretty soon with the graph, the historical graph, I think.
Yeah, the historical graphs are coming up right here at the bottom. So just breezing through this kind of like all these snapshots real quick. So the dividend snapshot, I'd say here one of the most unique things we have is the shareholder yield, which looks at the dividend yield, but also looks at the buyback yield. So how much is the stock buying back, and adds that up to the shareholder yield. So if a company is buying back shares, that's attractive for the shareholders. So this is a really interesting measure. The ownership is looking at the 13F data. So who owns the stock? So for example, Berkshire Hathaway is the 4th largest owner of Apple. They 46% of their holdings is in Apple, about 6% of the Apple shares. So very nice trade. Mr. Buffett, which ETFs own a stock, which mutual funds own a stock, and kind of the earnings history of a stock, the surprises and consensus estimates. We also have all the financials for stocks. So if you look at actuals versus consensus, this is the future estimates, this is the past, and looking at all these kind of like major metrics and what they look at. The price target is pretty interesting, just looking at Wall Street consensus estimates for the price target, where the stock is versus the average. So Apple, about in line. If we look at something like a Tesla, it's all over the place. I think today it's trading about 15% downside relative to consensus. But as you can see, that this is kind of like all over the place. So it goes to show you that the value of Wall Street sometimes is a little bit fuzzy.
Yeah, so I had a question with, questions / maybe future product release. So maybe you're familiar with thefly.com, where they they release those analyst notes and then new price targets. So is this something Koyfin could be working on in the future? Because we get the news articles that we have maybe an upgrade, downgrade, but we don't really get the analyst note. I know this is something really difficult to get to and implement, but maybe in the future this might be something accessible to users.
I think that would be a great data set for us to get. We've had a number of people ask for it. As you said, it's a little bit difficult to get. From the banks, they won't license their notes to retail investors typically because they save it for their clients. And then we may partner with someone like Fly, and there's some other kind of like Wall Street Digest that do that. So that's kind of just a data set that we'll need to get at some point.
Okay.
The estimates overview, so just what the estimates look like for the company, and then just the estimate trends in terms of looking at each specific estimate. Is it going up or down? So for Apple here, kind of flat estimates, which means as the stock price, the multiple expands. If you look at something like Nvidia here as maybe something different, right? Very kind of like different profile, especially for these specific estimates where after the earnings release in May, these are all going up. So typically you want to be looking at companies where estimates are being revised up, and that's why it's such a powerful feature or function to look at in the screening tool as well, to really spot which companies are having either EPS estimates or sales estimates being revised up. So that's really interesting. We have all the financial statements here that you can look at. So I'm not going to go through these in great detail, but these are all the financial highlights and stuff like that. News, filings, transcripts, and press releases. So just looking at some of these news, I think you mentioned that we have some upgrades and downgrades as a flash. We'll have that, but not the analyst notes. So these are going to be here. The filings, if you ever want to look at the filings of something, if you want to read the earnings transcript of what management is saying, that's here as well. And then the press releases here, which we just launched yesterday. So these are just going to start populating with data starting yesterday. I forget who is, let's see, I think this company had a press release. So yeah, so Constellation Brands had a press release yesterday. So we'll have the press releases here, but that's going to be populated starting to yesterday. So it might be blank for some of the companies, or depending on when this episode airs, it might be a little more populated. Okay, so Neil, I made you suffer until graphs, but we're here now. Let me change this back to Apple just because people know that better than Constellation. And so this graphing function is really, really powerful. It takes all the data we have on our platform and lets you graph anything against anything else. So if I wanted to graph, let's say, PE ratio, NTM, I could do that very easily and look at it over the past 20 years. If I wanted to add the short interest here, I could add that very easily. If I wanted to add the market cap, I could do that very easily as well. So if you go to Plus Data Series, you could browse the different categories or data series we have here, or you could search for something up here. And then the other powerful thing is once I have some combination of graphs that I want to save, I could save it as a template. And so these are my kind of like templates here. And I'll show you kind of like, so this is my short interest template where I just have the short interest information. This is my valuation template where I have the different valuation metrics here, and I could see whether something is trading high or low. This is my let's see down here, my margins template. So just looking at the margin profile of a company. So once you add a bunch of these different graphs, you can save a template, and it becomes pretty easy to flip through this. So that if you come back tomorrow and you open up the graphs, these templates are here saved for you. So you don't have to recreate them by adding it to the charts every single time. The other thing to mention is the share button. So if I have a graph and I wanted to share it, I could click share. It would generate the image, and then I could just copy this image and tweet it or post it in a blog. So very easy to share information as well. Is there anything on the graphing you wanted me to highlight, or it isn't clear?
So when I compare two companies, sometimes the colors are the same on the graph, which makes it harder to see the difference. So could it be that when you compare two companies, let's say revenue or PE or whatnot, then automatically the color cannot be the same. So visually it becomes easier to identify which company is which. Of course, you can see it on the side, but if you look at the lines and both of them are blue, or the bars, both of them are blue, sometimes a bit confusing. And this
Yeah,
was one of the comments from some viewers as well.
yeah. So so you're saying like um if I like add you're saying if I add like a different company, like if I have
Yeah.
Meta here,
And then you look
and
at revenue and free cash flow and you have bars, then you have the
yeah,
same blue
yeah,
colors or orange colors.
yeah. The colors are not great on our platform. We need to improve them. Um, so one is you can manually change
Yeah.
it. So you can go, and obviously that's a pain in the ass. You don't want to do that. We are rolling out a new function that lets you do that more easily. Can I share that with you? Can I show you?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Let me just pull it up here. It's on. This is going to be a good experiment in whether something works or not. So we're creating a new graph type. It's going to be called like fundamental graph or comparison graph. And what it lets you do is it lets you add the tickers here independently and the data points independently. And so if you add something here, and you can see the colors are then consistent for each one of these kind of like sections. So the PEs are all here, the EV to sales are all here, the net margins are all here, and then the colors are all consistent. So that if I add Google here, then it's gonna add it as a yellow color, and that yellow color is just going to be consistent everywhere. And I think if you change the color here, it should change it for everywhere. And looks like it's not working because it's still in beta, but
Yeah.
that's kind of like what we're doing to solve that. So hopefully that'll help you as a new function.
Okay, that's great. Can someone plot prior transactions for each stock on this graph that we see on the graph setting, so that they can see the PE and PEG ratios of prior transactions? Because when you went to the portfolio screens or board, you could set your own price, right? The price that you bought the stock. So would you be able to see what PE or what PEG ratio was in the past? And so you can compare it to what it is right now, then maybe see, maybe it's worth selling or raising cash or stuff like that.
So just to clarify the question, so if I'm looking at, let me just change this back to Apple because NVIDIA sometimes doesn't have a PE. So let's say I'm looking at PE here as a metric here. So the idea is to say kind of like, hey, I bought the stock here and I sold it here. Yeah. This isn't tied to this. So I think there's a couple of ways or a couple of things that come out of this. So one is it's not tied to the portfolio graph. But you could put notes here. So for example, if I wanted to kind of like put a line here, I could do that, or if I wanted to like put a small circle, I could do that, and then have like whatever, like bought whatever it is. So I could have an annotation. So it wouldn't be automatically tied to your portfolio, but these annotations would remain on the graph with the template that you're on. So as long as you pulled up Apple with the template you're on, these annotations would come back. So a little bit of a manual process, but I think right now our portfolio functionality is pretty limited because you could only do like one average, right? You can't do like what's called lots, which is I bought 100 shares in 2020, and then I bought 200 more in 2021, whatever it is. So ideally, you'd be able to put those in, and once you put those in, you'd probably want to just graph the price historically and see where you bought and sold stuff, and then instead of the price, you probably want to change it to like valuation or some other graph. So I think that's the kind of functionality we'll add. And I think that's what the user is asking about. But right now, that's a very long way of saying we don't have that functionality.
Okay, no, fair enough.
Um, yeah. Anything else on that?
More portfolio stuff, but no, it's probably the same answer.
Yeah, the portfolio stuff is really kind of like, requested feature.
Mm-hmm.
That's something we want to spend more time in terms of like when you have a portfolio, giving you more portfolio tools to like see a graph over time of the
Yeah.
portfolio. Be able to see the risk profile. So looking at the sector composition, or looking at the subsector composition, looking at the factor exposure, looking at the valuation of the portfolio, which you could sort of do now by doing the weight adjusted
Mm-hmm.
sum. So I know my portfolio is very expensive here, but we'll give you kind of like more tools to look at the like valuation historically as a time series. So we'll be building a lot more of those tools.
Yeah. Yeah. So what features are you most excited about right now, and future features as well, if you can reveal some of those?
Well, I'll tell you the most popular features are by far graphing. So people love our just graphing, the ability to graph valuation and all these different fundamentals and macro instruments. So that's our most used feature by far. And then the watch lists and the screening tools are really used. So that's something where I think the way we bring together all the data, the way you could just have it all in one place, have averages, have different watch lists set up. I think that's pretty unique and very very popular. And then there's like a tail of features, so it's not like one feature is worse than another.
Mm-hmm.
People use these snapshots a lot. I as someone who looks at technicals, I built this feature called lots of charts, which I love.
Mm-hmm.
Which is basically you select a portfolio, like one of your watch lists. So this is my Rob's watch list, and I'll look at the stuff like typically on a 5-year view basis. You could then have some options here, so you could select either a regular graph or one of your chart templates that you saved, but I like to look at it just on a regular basis and look at the performance, and then just kind of like going through these and just seeing like what's trending up, what's trending down, where are the different trends and how are they changing. So I typically like to look at this on a weekly or biweekly basis, and just to kind of like see what's going on. And I'll typically do that for, let's say I'll get it for like the SPYs over here, S&P 500, and just go through the charts and just kind of like say what's interesting, and kind of like what's making new highs, and always want to think about stuff as they're trending up or making new highs and why that's the case and what are the implications for other stocks or other sectors.
Yeah, great. No, I discovered this, I think, last week or
Mm,
beginning of this week. Pretty fun to play around
yeah,
with.
yeah. This market scatter plot I think is kind of cool. Like again, choosing
Mm-hmm.
the stocks that you want, and then just again like figuring out like how do you want to slice and dice this data. So if you want to look at price and performance and look at let's see, price change, um, and look at year to date, um, and just being able to kind of like see this stuff. And so Carnival Cruise Lines making a new high, still pretty decent short interest, not super high, but just kind of like seeing what's really been driving the market over the past year to date. And again, you can slice and dice this in different ways. So that's a really cool feature that I think is a little bit underused. The other feature maybe to highlight is this earnings calendar. This is a way for a user to just pull this up for the S&P 500. Way for a user to just say kind of like, hey, what's a way to think about my stocks that are reporting or that have reported. So we have, as a company reports, we have all these figures, kind of like the revenue, the EBITDA, the EBIT, the EPS, what the average estimate was,
Mm-hmm.
what the actual was, what the surprise was, giving you kind of the transcript. And then obviously today is Thursday, so a lot of these companies haven't reported yet. And then for the future, kind of like what the calendar is or what the expected report dates and what the expected estimates are. And you could also add this to your calendar as well.
Okay, no, that's yeah. Earnings calendar isn't something that's very old, I think, or at least I didn't discover it until maybe beginning of this year.
Yeah, we just rolled it out beginning of
Yeah,
this year, so I'm glad. I'm glad you didn't know about it beforehand.
yeah. And no, it's pretty useful. With the financial analyst also, I think people should know that they can customize their own lists there. Like there is a default one, but of course you can make your own, which is pretty useful.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a pretty kind of like advanced feature, but the people who use it love it.
Mhm.
So like you mentioned, there's some defaults here, like income statement, balance sheet. But what you can do is you can click new and add your own template, or you can. So let me just kind of add a new template here. I'll call that my Neil test. And so now I have a tab here called Neil test, and then I could add different things here. So if I wanted to, like let's say, just look at all the cash flow from operations, and then financing and investing, and I wanted that group to be just like my cash flow group. This template for whatever series I set up, I would save this template, and now again tomorrow when I wake up and I'm looking at a new company, I can go here and that template is going to be here, and it's going to have all the settings here. You can either start with a blank template,
Mhm.
or you can duplicate one of the existing ones and then modify it however you want.
Yeah. One last thing before I ask you what you're most excited about for the future
Mm.
of Koyfin. In the graphs, would it be possible to have the option the most popular, for example, the templates, right? Right now it's price and volume. Would it be
Mhm.
possible to have like most popular on the platform? These are the templates that are most used by other users. Could be interesting.
I think that's a really good idea. Yeah, one of the things we're trying to do more of is have like more pre-made stuff so that
Mhm.
users don't have to create it from scratch. So I think that's a great idea. I think when you hit new, I think we should have some pre-made templates which we'll see kind of like what people are using. And then the other thing is, I think eventually, at some point in the near future, we'll be rolling out more community features so that if you have a template, you could just kind of check a box and it'll be part of the
Mhm.
community repository. And people could then kind of like upvote it and
Yeah.
clone it to their own account.
Okay, that's great. So yeah, what are you most excited about Koifin's future?
Yeah, I'm most excited about a couple of things. So one is we have a pretty vibrant community here in terms of feedback. So if you go under feature requests, and you, let's say, do the top requests, we always look at these feature requests. And so I'd say our roadmap is very closely tied, or definitely informs a roadmap right here. It depends on kind of like, are we able to do it? So just like Excel integration,
Mhm.
that's something we can't do because
The
our
partnership.
data our capital IQ data provider wouldn't be a huge fan of us basically taking their core business and offering it for a lot less.
Yeah.
I'd say at some point in the future we'll probably offer it as like like a pretty. It'll probably be expensive, I'm guessing, if they license it to us. But that's one of the reasons we haven't created
Mhm.
it. Alerts we're working on right now. Comp table you could sort of do right now, but we'll be creating a better feature. Right now in your watch list, you could again add those summary rows for percentile, whatever it is. You create a comp table that way. Um, so that's a way to do that. Let me see the feature requests here, just so I could have options. Is something that we want to add next year as a data set. These data items that are just
Mhm.
a lot more sophisticated, we're adding over the next couple of months. Model portfolios and my portfolios is that portfolio functionality we talked about. Insider trading is a really good data set that we're going to be adding as well for insider buys and sells. Real time data. I think this mostly means for European stocks and Asian
Yeah.
stocks. We'll be adding stuff like that. So these are the features that we're really excited about. I'm really excited about this kind of concept that you talked about before, which is the co-pilot concept.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you don't have Rob Koyfman on to tell you and walk you through the features, how do you allow a user to ask questions and search for different things? So that I think that becomes really powerful and really interesting. And then I think ultimately probably integrating Koyfin with some kind of transaction, so you could either link to your portfolio or execute on Koyfin or something, because that's probably a interesting something that our users will benefit
Yeah.
from. And then lastly, just having some sort of social and community aspect where members can discuss ideas, maybe comment on financials, comment on graphs, comment on dashboards, and have discussions around that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think again, we have so much potential for creating stuff. I'd say the to the extent we could connect users as a network, so that if one person creates something, that they can share it and comment on it and discuss it. I think that would just amplify the value of the network much more.
No, completely agree. I'm very excited about the future of the platform. I use it every day. It's in my workflow when I make videos. So very, very thankful for that. And hopefully the viewers and the users enjoy it as well.
Cool.
Before I finish, I have to ask you, I asked everyone that comes on the channel, what's the number one thing on your bucket list?
What's the number one thing on my bucket list? Wow. That's a question I haven't thought of. The number one thing on my bucket list. I would probably say go to space. I'd love to go to space.